What's happening, people? It's Ryan Taylor again. And before I get started, I just want to say a massive shout out to everyone who tuned in to my opening video last week. It was kind of an experiment that I wanted to try. I wanted to touch on a bit of video and potentially YouTube. As I mentioned last week, it was something that a few people have advised to me, saying, why don't you give it a try? And the first video went down really well, actually. I was really, really chuffed and grateful for some of the feedback it received, the amount of views it's got. I think it's sitting on just under 800 views at the moment, which was far greater than anything I was expecting. Yeah, so I'm really honestly humbled by that. I know it's nothing, incredible, but genuinely for the first video, it was far better than I was expecting. Just before we get started, I wanted to kind of explain. Last week, obviously, I mentioned that the main reason I started up the channel was to break down some of the stories in my column in further detail, and that remains true. The problem I've kind of found with it, particularly today, is that with the transfer window, things are just so fast changing that, effectively stuff can be old news. That was not necessarily the case with my column, but a lot of the information and stories that I've shared this morning in the column that dropped at 9 a.m. If you haven't read it yet, link in the description. But a lot of stuff has gone on today, just generally, and I've been digging into it all day. I think I started work at 7 this morning, didn't leave till 5, and then since then I've still kind of been chipping away at stories just because I've got that passion and that what's the word? I just can't leave it, It's just like a genuine buzz I get off the, finding the stories, and it's a good method and mindset to have, but at the same time, I probably should be switching off right now and watching some Netflix or something. But anyway, as I mentioned, some of the stories in this morning's column, I'm going to combine into the information that I've got now on some of these stories. Now, the first player I wanted to talk about is a player that's really starting to, really starting to dominate headlines, really. And you've probably not gone an hour without reading his name. I think must have wrote the words Dusan Vlahovic, or Vlahovic, sorry, I should say. One of my friends will correct me on that. I must have written his name 300 times in the past week or so, but he's one of the main attractions in Europe right now. So Arsenal, from what we understand, it's been pretty known in the media in the past few days that Arsenal are pretty hell-bent on signing Dusan Vlahovic. Now, I reported back in December that Arsenal would listen to offers for Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, something I mentioned last week. But the reason they're starting to intensify their pursuit of Vlahovic is that Eddie Nketiah is now the subject of fairly strong interest from Crystal Palace. Last summer, the Eagles held talks over a permanent deal with Arsenal, but were unable to agree a fee. And now the difference is Nketiah is now in the final 6 months of his contract. Now, Arsenal can either keep on to him, or they can sell and get sort of a small return for him. Maybe, I should think around about the £10 million mark, maybe below that. So right now, Arsenal are on course to pretty much sell Aubameyang. There doesn't seem to be a way back for him. Lacazette is out of contract at the end of the season. Folarin Balogun has joined Middlesbrough on a season-long loan, as I exclusively reported on Express Sport last week. He had his medical today, which is Tuesday evening. Not sure when this video is going to drop, so it may be made official by then. So that leaves Arsenal short. Now, if Palace want Nketiah, from what I understand, Arsenal will use any fee to go towards Vlahovic. Now, there's a lot of complications with the actual deal itself. First of all, Arsenal have the money, I believe, deposited ready to spend on Vlahovic. So I do think they could amass an offer of sort of 55 to 60 million pounds. They were initially prepared to wait until the summer, but the feeling is now is that this is the best opportunity Arsenal have to sign him. Tottenham are big fans, especially Fabio Paratici and Antonio Conte. They'd love to partner Kane with Vlahovic, and a summer deal was potentially on the cards from Tottenham's perspective, and that's why Arsenal kind of want to beat the race and really give it a go and see what they can do. The problems they're facing is that, as I mentioned in last week's video, Vlahovic isn't particularly keen on joining Arsenal, or his representatives aren't keen. They haven't picked up the phone to Arsenal. Furthermore, the kind of circle around the player at the moment is kind of advising him against the move. Reason being, Arsenal haven't been able to guarantee Champions League football in previous seasons. Obviously, it looks like they're on course to potentially make their way back into the competition. Arteta's certainly got them moving in the right direction. And Arteta and Edu want to make Vlahovic a corner, a pillar of the project. So the money's there to spend, but it's the other aspects of the deal, agents' fees, potential wages, that are really going to stand in Arsenal's way, potentially, in addition to the fact the player isn't overly keen on joining. That's not to say Arsenal won't be able to twist his arm and potentially convince him. But as it stands, it's not really looking viable. But that, like I said, Arsenal, the information I was receiving is that they would wait until the end of the season. But in the past few days, it's become apparent that they're going to launch a move. I'm just going to adjust this lamp, it's too bright. It's become apparent that they're going to give it a try, see what they can do. Like I said, Fiorentina have got 18 months left on their Vlahovic's contract, so they're sort of cautious that they may need to sell. So that's the situation with Vlahovic, and there's a lot of other interested clubs as well, but Arsenal really are keen on signing him, and this month as well. Vlahovic is not totally against the idea of staying at Fiorentina to get a full season under his belt, as mentioned last week. But there are a number of other targets on Arsenal's radar if they can't pull a deal off, and those include Jonathan David. I think Chris Wheatley from Football.London reported correctly earlier today that Edu has already met with Jonathan David's agent back in December. That is correct. Dominic Calvert-Lewin obviously is a player we've talked about before. He is of interest as well, and so is Alexander Isak of Real Sociedad. So it's one to keep an eye on. But if Palace accelerate talks for Nketiah, which is looking likely at the moment, if they are prepared to meet any fee that Arsenal are looking to require, then, don't rule out an official bid from the Gunners for Vlahovic in the coming days and weeks. Just a few more little bits on Arsenal. Understand Sead Kolasinac is close, well, not close, but at the moment looking likely to join Marseille on a permanent deal. He was in talks with the French club over joining in the summer when his Arsenal contract expires. But from what I understand from information that was relayed to me today, Arsenal are potentially considering a mutual termination of his contract, which would allow Marseille to sign him on a free transfer. French club fairly active in January as well. I think they've just secured a deal for Cedric Bakambu, who's formerly of Villarreal, been playing in China. Good striker. Good January deal that. Now, just some more stuff now on Arsenal's midfield search. Now, I know some of the fans that follow me are desperate for names. Unfortunately, it's kind of being kept under wraps at the moment, but from what I understand, there's a few plates spinning, so to speak, and most of that is coming through Edu's contacts. 3 Brazilians on Arsenal's radar. Now, the names I have are Bruno Guimarães of Lyon. It's kind of well known, to be honest, that Arsenal were keen on him. There was interest when he was in Brazil, but Juninho helped broker a deal to bring him to France, and he looks a really good player. I've really been impressed with him in the Champions League, particularly last summer when Lyon knocked out Juventus, who are another club that have looked at the player. But he's kind of valued at around £40 million, which is, it's unclear whether Arsenal are prepared to spend that much on a central midfield player this month. Sorry, I should have covered this before, but the kind of outlook from Arsenal is they've shot themselves in the foot, really, letting Ainsley Maitland-Niles go on loan to Roma. Obviously, it's not good to keep a player against their will. He wanted to move away and play regularly. after speaking with Mourinho, he felt like Roma was the right move for him. He started against Juventus on Sunday. But that's not the only issue for Arsenal. Now, it's come at a bad time because Mohamed El-Neni and Thomas Partey have obviously gone off to the Africa Cup of Nations with Egypt and Ghana. But Granit Xhaka has returned a positive COVID test, which was the key sort of blow. It leaves Albert Sambi Lokonga, the only senior Arsenal central midfield player, fit at the moment. Charlie Patino started in the FA Cup at Nottingham Forest, but based on his performance, I don't think he's quite ready yet. So Arsenal are really sort of focusing and intensifying their efforts to sign a central midfielder this week, hopefully in time for Sunday's North London derby with Tottenham. So they play Carabao Cup semi-final first leg against Liverpool on Thursday. Looking unlikely that there's going to be any immediate developments in the next sort of 24, 48 hours, but another name on their radar is Arthur Melo, who I touched upon in my column earlier this morning. Obviously went to Barcelona from Grêmio in Brazil. Didn't quite work out for him, and he went to Juventus in the summer of 2020 as part of that ludicrous player plus cash strange deal involving Miralem Pjanic. I think it was investigated by FIFA because it was kind of dodgy. But the situation with Arthur is he came off the bench on Sunday with Alvaro Morata in a double sub from Max Allegri against Roma, and they both changed the game. Arthur really gave Juve some control in the middle of the park. He's renowned for kind of his technical side of his game, his passing. That's really given Arsenal, that's the kind of profile Arsenal want. You know, someone who can control the game and give them a bit more control over matches. I think at the moment, Thomas Partey was obviously doing that. But on the ball, not quite sure Partey is a top-class midfield player. He's steady, wins the ball back, gives it to the players that can do the damage, which is what's required. But Arsenal are really lacking that at the moment. Another player that has been discussed is Danilo from Palmeiras in Brazil. Not quite sure what the situation is with him, but I know discussions have taken place on whether that would be one for the future because he's a young player, or whether that would be one they're looking to bring in now. But certainly a player of interest. A few players I wanted to note. It's kind of strange that, you know, given the interest last summer, that Arteta seems to have moved on from Sander Berge, who's obviously had a whirlwind time at Sheffield United since he was their record signing. Not quite worked out for him at all at Bramall Lane. And another player, Houssem Aouar from Lyon, Guimarães' accomplice in the middle of the park. Interest seems to have really died in him. Was one of the most highly rated midfield players in Europe in recent times. Juve, Barca have had a look, but doesn't look like Arsenal prepared to reignite their interests. So what happens next is kind of anyone's guess. I know Dennis Zakaria is a player that's on the market. He is, of course, out of contract in the summer. Borussia Mönchengladbach are kind of looking at a £6 million fee if they are to let him go this January. So they will sell him because obviously they don't want to lose him on a free transfer. And he kind of ticks all the boxes for Arteta, as I mentioned in my column. What I mean by that is he's a 25-year-old established Swiss international, can play box to box, can win the ball back. He's been looked at by the likes of Bayern Munich, Liverpool, even Manchester City and Chelsea. So, you know, it's a player of interest, and the deal was there to be done should Arsenal want to do so. But at the moment, the kind of messages are no. But like I said, from what I understand, there'll be a few other targets on Arsenal's radar that the identities at the moment are remaining beneath the radar, and I'll expect those to come to light in the coming weeks. But those are the targets that I'm aware of, and there is more. And like I said, it's such a fast-changing situation that don't be surprised if developments happen fast on that front. I want to move on to Newcastle now. Where to start with Newcastle, honestly? What a crazy, crazy few weeks of life in the transfer market as the richest club in the world. Now, tonight they have triggered Chris Wood's release clause from Burnley, the New Zealand international who has managed double figures in the Premier League in each of the last 4 seasons. Doesn't look like it would have been the case this time around. He's only managed 3 goals in 17 outings, but this is a clever, snidey deal from Newcastle, really, because not only are they strengthening and adding the striker they wanted to land before the Watford game on Saturday, but they're weakening Burnley, who are, an arch relegation rival, and they're taking crucial goals out of Sean Dyche's side, and the Clarets are rightly fuming about this deal. I don't know much about the ins and outs of this one. A lot of reporters have been covering it that cover Northern football, but from the outside looking in, 20 to 25 million pound release clause is a snip when you kind of consider that Burnley, like I said, a relegation rival, have lost their best player. I mean, Burnley could obviously reinvest that, and I don't think for a 30-year-old player who's out of contract next year, that's the worst scenario. Ben Brereton Diaz is one that, I'd like to see Burnley throw the money at, but not sure whether they will do that. See, the clock's ticking now. I think we've got, around about 3 weeks till the transfer window's up, maybe a bit less. So Burnley need to get a move on, really, on that front. But Newcastle have got their striker. Look, it's a sensible addition, and even if they do go and sign another striker, Chris Wood's not a bad player to have in your squad. He's a target man, brings different qualities to the table. But there is another striker that Newcastle are exploring, and that's Stade Rennes' Hugo Ekitike. Not sure if I pronounced that right. From what I understand, Rennes have held talks with Newcastle and West Ham over a deal. It's a 19-year-old forward who's managed 8 goals in the French top flight this season. As a player with high hopes in France for his prospects, they believe that he could be potentially a star of the future. But obviously, this is kind of a risk Newcastle don't really need to be taking at this stage of the window, and given that they're trying to fight for survival. £30 million is the fee being quoted, and Rennes are almost insistent on a sell-on clause because of the players' ceiling and potential. Now, at the moment, from what I understand, Newcastle are just in informal discussion, so they're basically drafting up proposals and kind of gauging what kind of money would be involved if they were to move for a deal. They've not registered an interest as such, as they've told Rennes that they want to sign the player. At the moment, they're kind of just sounding him out amongst the list of options. But a second striker is definitely on the agenda for Newcastle. But another situation which I touched upon in my column this morning was the club's frantic search for a centre-back. Now, striker was the priority after losing Callum Wilson to a calf injury for 8 weeks. But centre-back's a big problem as well for Eddie Howe. Now, it started with Sven Botman, who was without a doubt the club's leading target. Lille have shown no signs of wanting to negotiate with Newcastle in January. They don't want to lose the player mid-season. I know Wolves have had a look in the past as well. But in the case of Botman, 2 bids have been rebuffed by Newcastle. One believed to be around £25 million. One believed to be around £30 million. And Lille kind of just said, enough's enough now. We don't want to continue talking. So Newcastle moved on to Diego Carlos. £25 million bid rejected by Sevilla. There was talk earlier this week or at the weekend that Newcastle were accelerating their pursuit of him. Nothing's really developed on that front. It's not a deal that I've had much information on or I know much about, to be honest. All I know is Jules Koundé went off injured in the 1-0 win over Getafe for Sevilla on Sunday, and he had a back problem. It doesn't look serious, but if it was, Sevilla would obviously not be willing to sell Carlos, given they're second in La Liga, 5 points adrift of Real Madrid with a game in hand. But another name that has been linked and all over the press this week. Benoit Badiashile of Monaco, 20-year-old centre-back. Now, I have information on this deal. Talks have been held between Newcastle and Monaco over a deal worth around 25 to 35 million pound. Similar price bracket to Botman. But the issue with Badiashile is on Sunday he made his return from injury in Monaco's 0-0 draw at Nantes. Sorry, I don't know how to pronounce that. But he limped off with a muscle injury. It looked like left hamstring, which is an area he's had a problem with before. Now, RMC Sport in France reported earlier today that Badiashile is out for 6 weeks. Now, a fellow journalist that I was discussing the situation with earlier today told me that his representatives who are involved in negotiations with Newcastle say he's only out for 2 weeks. So there's kind of conflicting information on that. Ultimately, from what I understand, Newcastle aren't going to roll the dice and sign a player that's struggling with injury at the moment. They require availability immediately. They need players that are ready to contribute, have a fairly reliable injury history. There's lots of points to play for in the second half of the season. And Newcastle need bodies. They need improvement. They need quality. So I think at 20 years old, Badiashile remains a player of interest. But I'd be surprised if they are really ready to potentially risk a significant portion of money on signing him. Other names include Issa Diop. West Ham not interested in selling this month. See, they've lost Kurt Zuma to injury, Angelo Ogbonna to a knee problem as well for the rest of the season, I think. So Issa Diop is a no-go. Abdou Diallo of Paris Saint-Germain is an interesting one. Was sort of marketed and offered to them last year in previous months since the takeover. PSG are looking to sell to recoup money. An interesting side note as well is AC Milan have also moved on to Diallo after giving up on Botman. So could be another potential saga forming there. Obviously, AC Milan and Newcastle have been going toe-to-toe for Botman. Not sure if Newcastle are overly sold on Diallo. Another name they have looked at, though, is Nico Schlotterbeck from Freiburg in Germany. Bayern Munich are linked in the German press with the player who's 22. But from what the reports around him are saying is that Schlotterbeck wants to stay at Freiburg until the end of the season. But once again, with Newcastle, as we've seen with Chris Wood, they've got stuff going on behind the scenes in terms of targets. Not everything we read in the press is... there's more to it. There's more targets. Newcastle have known they've needed to spend in January since the takeover. Plans have been going on behind the scenes, lots of negotiations, and I'm led to believe there are several targets that are not even in the press at the moment, but Newcastle are working on. So that's one to keep an eye on. Just moving on to some Everton news now. See, Lucas Digne looks set to join Aston Villa. Another player who has been discussed as part of the negotiation is Anwar El Ghazi. Situation with El Ghazi is Everton are keen on signing him, but want to keep the negotiations separate to the Lucas Digne deal. Now, Everton looking at loan until the end of the season with a potential option to buy, whereas Villa would prefer a permanent sale, and they're asking for about £15 million from what a source close to talks has told me. Now, another interesting point with Everton, outside of some of the other interest in some of their players and some of their transfer plans, is they retain an interest in Dwight McNeil. Now, I was doing some digging into this story a couple months ago. So obviously Everton were interested last summer. From what I understand, I believe McNeil has got a significant release clause in his Burnley contract. Been unable to confirm the figure. Would be interesting to know as well if there's a relegation clause as well included in his Claret deal that he signed last October, I believe. But Benitez loves McNeil. Villa had a look at McNeil as well, interestingly, before they got Leon Bailey. But obviously, after losing Chris Wood, doesn't look like Burnley would entertain losing McNeil. And also, furthermore, it's been really quiet on the McNeil front. I'm not aware of any approaches that have been made this January, but I just know Everton are interested and he remains a long-term target for the club. If Burnley were to go down, I'd expect them to potentially move for him. But it's one to keep an eye on, obviously, with El Ghazi negotiations as well. Would suggest they're after a winger, which is kind of surprising in a way, given Anthony Gordon's emergence. And you've got Damari Gray playing out of his skin, Andros Townsend playing well as well upon returning from injury. And you do sort of question whether Everton need to strengthen in other departments as well. I know it's been interest in Mason Holgate, and looks like he could potentially move on either this month or the summer. Seems a bit of a lost cause at Everton. There were high hopes for him in previous times. Sounds crazy, but Manchester City actually had a look at Holgate a couple of years ago, which seems unheard of now because obviously he's fallen off a cliff in that sense. Elsewhere, central midfielder of priority to Everton, Sean Longstaff, is obviously of interest. I believe informal offer was rejected by Newcastle earlier in the window around about last week when Newcastle discussed Lucas Digne. Newcastle don't really want to offload players before they strengthen, particularly someone like Longstaff, who's been a regular under Howe. But Everton are kind of shopping in a market where they're looking at 20 million tops for a player, really. Don't quite know what the financial situation is, but given the amount of cash they've wasted in previous times and the ongoing developments at Bramley Moor Dock of the new stadium, get the sense cash is kind of restricted, particularly after last summer's business when, you know, they were literally signing players for peanuts. Asmir Begovic, Gray, Townsend, who have all, to their credit, been decent acquisitions. So yeah, that's what I know on Everton. But like I said, similarly with Newcastle, stuff going on behind the scenes. Do believe Everton want 2 or 3 more as well, and I believe they'll get them. It was made abundantly clear to Benitez that Everton board would back him in the January transfer market. It's one of the reasons he hasn't been sacked yet. And he's confident he can turn it around. I know Everton fans will disagree with that, but Benitez believes with sort of 4 or 5 new players, the kind of complexity of Everton's season will change when you also add in the return of Dominic Calvert-Lewin. It can't really get much worse. And obviously, you know, if the Digne deal was sorted with Villa, looking about 22.5, 25 million for Digne, that's going to free up more money to spend. And from the noises I'm hearing, that will kind of go straight back into reinvestment. So that's Everton. And just finally, just some bits from my column now. I want to talk about Joshua Ajayi, exclusive story I broke. Really good feel story, actually. I'm from Kent. Club called Ramsgate, a non-league club. Team I've played against probably over 10 times when I was growing up, playing youth football. They've really kind of honed a new style of developing young players. It's been a lot of joy for their young players in recent times. A lad called Rory Smith went on trial at Aberdeen in 2019, I think it was. Successful trial. I think he was offered a contract, but for personal reasons decided against the move. So, you know, scouts are looking at Ramsgate's players, and also there's a lad called Jacob Mensah, centre-back, who's now at League One side Morecambe, signed for Crystal Palace, spent time with their under-23s from Ramsgate. But now Joshua Ajayi, who was at Crystal Palace's academy and released in the summer of 2020, has been handed a trial at Tottenham this week. When I put the tweet out, it kind of annoyed me. There was quite a few Tottenham fans, sort of classic football fickle fans, saying, "Oh, Daniel Levy this, Daniel Levy's, we need a striker, and Daniel Levy's going for the cheap players and all this. Conte's going to walk if he sees signings like this." I mean, those people are just completely brain dead, because this is quite clearly a signing for the club's academy and under-23 side. If Ajayi was to be successful in his trial, he's 19 years old. He's not going to be Harry Kane's deputy, for God's sake. He's, you know, a non-league player with a bright future, one that could slot right in for the under-23 side. And from what I understand, Spurs under-23s need a striker as well. So he's a player that can play through the middle or out wide. He scored 17 goals this season in the Isthmian Ryman South East Division, which is step 4 of non-league and the 8th tier of English football. Top goal scorer in the league. I know a number of other clubs have had a look at the player, gone to watch him at Southwood. That includes Stevenage, who have been preparing a bid. But first, they're sort of waiting to see what happens with his trial at Tottenham. Ajayi was back at Ramsgate on Monday night to meet with some of the club's youth players, offering them advice. He's kind of like the poster boy at Ramsgate right now. Been a revelation. Lots of clubs have looked at him, like I said. And interestingly, his dad is boxing trainer Tunde Ajayi, who is a boxing trainer who trains at Anthony Yard, light heavyweight, who fought for the world title in 2019 against Sergei Kovalev in Russia. So, from what I understand after speaking to the Ramsgate manager, he's big on mindset and, things like that. Having his father Tunde in his corner is only going to bode him well in terms of trying to make a break in the pro game. And just lastly, another soundbite, mini bite from my column, is Brighton are accelerating talks to sign the diamond of Paraguay football, Julio Enciso, from club Libertad, a Paraguay club. He is, from what I understand, a forward that can play. He plays predominantly out wide, but he can also play through the middle. He's been capped already twice, I think, by the Paraguayan national team. But there is set to be a meeting between Club Libertad and his representatives on Wednesday to determine his future. But Brighton are interested in the deal, and the early indications are they could pay up to £8 million. Not sure if that's the final figure, but obviously we've seen since Graham Potter's arrival, Brighton have really needed no second invitation to invest in their global network of young players. Their scouting system is really starting to pluck some gems. They have signed Kasper Kozlowski as well for £8 million. He became the youngest player to ever feature at a European Championships at the summer with Poland. He's gone on loan to Tony Bloom's Belgian side. But the South America market is one that Brighton have obviously delved into before, with Alexis McAllister from Boca Juniors, who's now starring for the club. Scored a brace against Everton earlier this month. And obviously Moises Caicedo as well, the Ecuadorian wonder kid. So Brighton, fair play to them. They've really consolidated their style and their, the belief in the side. They're now looking on course to potentially finish sort of 12th or above, potentially top half, and that's credit to Potter, but also the excellent work of the recruitment team. And then that's given them a little bit of spending freedom to invest in some of these younger talents that could potentially make them big money, or even better, they go on to become stars for Brighton of the future. So Julio Enciso is a player that could join Brighton potentially in the coming weeks. That's all from my video today. Just want to say once again, appreciate all the support. Follow me on Twitter at Ryan Taylor Sport for all the latest. Like I said, I'm delving into these stories on a daily basis at the moment. Probably book a holiday once the transfer window's open, to be honest. But in the description will be my column. Like I said, there's also a Daily Express transfer newsletter, which you can sign up to and have daily transfer news and my column pinged straight to your inbox. And as well, if stuff in the video isn't for you, if you're just a Brighton fan here for the Brighton bit or the Newcastle, in the description of all my videos is going to be the timings, so you can literally skip to the section you want to listen to. Like, subscribe, share, and once again, thank you.